When we think of classic American cars, most of us immediately picture durability, prestige, and timeless design. It is almost unbelievable that many of these machines, now more than half a century old, can still run smoothly if well preserved. That speaks volumes about the engineering of that era. However, beneath this aura of longevity, there were also odd design choices that proved inconvenient or even dangerous. Ideas once promoted as innovative often turned into headaches for owners. In today's video, we will uncover the 10 worst features ever found in classic cars. This list comes from the real-world experiences of enthusiasts and longtime owners, so be prepared for both surprises and a few laughs. Let's see if your favorite classic ever carried one of these troublesome quirks. Number 1. Chevrolet motor mounts. Among the most serious engineering flaws ever seen in classic cars, the Chevrolet motor mounts of the mid-1960s stand out near the top. What seemed like a simple part turned into a real safety hazard for drivers. Motor mounts are meant to secure the engine in place and dampen vibration. But on Chevrolet models built between 1965 and 1969, including full-size cars, the Chevy 2 and the Camaro, the rubber mounts had a tendency to crack and fail. When that happened, the engine would lift and twist, pulling the throttle cable wide open. The result was sudden, unintended acceleration, with the driver unable to release the gas pedal. In that terrifying moment, the driver had only two options: shift quickly into neutral and risk damaging the engine as it revved to the limit, or shut the ignition off entirely to stop the car. Neither choice was safe, and both created panic behind the wheel. The issue became so widespread that GM launched a recall campaign. Dealers added steel safety straps to keep the engine from rocking out of place if the mounts broke. It was one of the rare cases where a design flaw forced immediate corrective action on a massive scale. Number 2. Mono-leaf rear springs. In the 1960s, the Oldsmobile Toronado and Cadillac Eldorado arrived with stunning styling and the prestige of being among America's first front-wheel drive luxury cars. Yet hidden beneath the glamour was a controversial engineering choice: the mono-leaf rear suspension, which relied on a single leaf spring. The concept was meant to save cost and space, paired with a semi-unitized frame and torsion bar front suspension. In practice, though, the results were disappointing. For such large and heavy coupes, a single leaf spring offered limited travel. The ride felt harsh, choppy, and noisy inside the cabin. Owners often described the sensation as stiff and boomy whenever the car hit potholes or rough pavement. Meanwhile, the Buick Riviera of the same era used a conventional rear suspension with coil springs. It delivered a smoother, more composed ride, highlighting how out of place the monoleaf setup felt on premium models like the Eldorado and Toronado. Within a few years, GM was forced to make adjustments, softening the harshness and eventually abandoning the monoleaf altogether. Later generations adopted full coil spring suspension, which finally matched the expectations of luxury buyers. Number 3. Annoying key buzzers. Among the features that annoyed classic car owners the most, the key and seatbelt buzzers deserve a special mention. Today's cars use soft tones or chimes that are easy on the ears, just enough to remind the driver. Back in the 1970s and 1980s, however, many American automakers chose harsh, piercing sounds that quickly wore on anyone inside the car. Older models often used mechanical or electronic buzzers that emitted a flat, repetitive drone. Some early 1980s GM cars were notorious for their high-pitched, continuous tone that never seemed to stop. AMC and Chevrolet models offered equally unpleasant versions, with rough, grating noises that irritated rather than warned. Instead of providing a subtle nudge, these systems felt like an assault on the driver's patience. The problem was made worse by how often they activated. The buzzer would sound not only if the key was left in the ignition, but also if the headlights were on, the seatbelt wasn't fastened, or a door was open. Combined, the driver almost never escaped the noise. For some owners, starting their beloved car also meant bracing themselves for those shrill reminders. Number 4. Ford Drop into Reverse. The Ford drop into reverse issue of the late 1960s was not just an inconvenient design, it was a serious safety problem. On many Ford models of that era, the gear selector had very weak detents. When a driver placed the car in park, even a simple vibration, like shutting the door, could cause the shifter to slip into reverse. The car would suddenly back up, sometimes with no one inside. Countless accidents were linked to this small but dangerous flaw. As the mechanism wore down over time, the situation became worse. The park pole and column lock often failed, allowing the lever to slide freely from park to reverse without any effort. Luxury models gave drivers a false sense of security with the parking brake, but many of these cars automatically released the brake as soon as the transmission engaged. That meant there was nothing to stop the vehicle from rolling backward. When pressed to act, Ford did not redesign the system. Instead, the company mailed warning stickers to customers reading, "Do not leave your car running in park." It was a quick fix that avoided addressing the true danger. Number 5. GM Deck Lid Louvers. In 1971, General Motors introduced what was promoted as a modern convenience: the deck lid louvers, ventilation slots, located on the trunk lid. This was part of the Astro ventilation system, designed to improve airflow through the cabin, clearing out smoke and stale air. On paper, it made sense, but in real-world use, it caused far more trouble than benefit. The louvers quickly became a trap for leaves, dirt, and water. In cold climates, moisture that entered would freeze inside the trunk lid, bonding it shut and making it heavier to lift. Owners in the Midwest often complained about trunks stuck solid after winter car washes. To make matters worse, some reports claimed exhaust fumes occasionally found their way back into the cabin, creating added concern, though this issue was harder to verify. The biggest consequence was rust. With water and debris collecting between the inner and outer metal panels, corrosion set in quickly. Repairs were costly and frustrating. After only 1 year of production, GM abandoned the design and relocated the ventilation outlets to the rear pillars, a much safer and more practical location. Number 6. Cadillac Mini Joystick Wiper Control. Cadillac was known for luxury and refinement, yet between 1974 and 1979, the brand introduced a detail that frustrated many owners: the tiny joystick wiper control. When Cadillac redesigned its instrument panel, the company replaced the familiar knob or switch with a miniature lever mounted to the left of the cluster. The intention was to look modern, but the real-world experience was disappointing. The joystick was so small and flimsy that it was difficult to control with precision, especially on bumpy roads. Switching between low, medium, and high speeds became even more annoying. If you were using the intermittent delay and suddenly faced a heavy downpour, you had to push the joystick through the off position before moving it up. If the wipers happened to be at their park point, they would pause for 2 or 3 seconds before restarting. Those seconds felt endless when your windshield was being flooded by rain. On top of that, the joystick felt cheap. a shocking contrast to Cadillac's reputation for elegance. A small control, yet one that left a lasting negative impression on drivers. It showed clearly how a design meant to appear advanced could actually diminish the luxury experience. Number 7. Ford Column Stalk Horn. Ford experimented with several unusual interior ideas, and one of the most disliked was the horn located on the end of the column stalk. Instead of a horn button in the center of the steering wheel, some Ford models, including the Lincoln Town Car, Mustang, and Escort during the late 1970s and early 1980s, required the driver to push the tip of a lever to honk. On paper, the concept borrowed from European cars, where some turn signal stalks also doubled as horn controls. But for American drivers, the habit felt completely unnatural. In an emergency, instinct told them to press the center of the wheel. Having to move a hand away and push a small lever made the reaction slower and less precise. Many owners grew frustrated with the setup. In tense moments, they fumbled for the horn, losing valuable seconds that could have helped avoid danger. The lack of intuitive control was the biggest flaw, and drivers voiced their annoyance loudly. Ford persisted for a few years, but customer dissatisfaction eventually forced the company to abandon the idea. Number 8. Hidden wipers. One feature that once seemed stylish but turned out to be troublesome in practice was the hidden windshield wipers. The idea sounded great. When not in use, the blades tucked neatly under the edge of the hood, giving the car a clean look and protecting the wipers from the elements. From the late 1960s through the mid-1970s, many American cars carried this design as a mark of sophistication. The problem came during harsh weather, especially heavy snow. Each swipe pushed snow from the passenger side toward the center of the glass. Then the driver's side wiper forced it downward. Very quickly, snow piled up at the gap between the windshield and the hood where the wipers retracted. The buildup jammed the blades, stressed the linkage, and often knocked one arm slightly out of alignment. Cars that spent winters in the Midwest still show this issue today. One of the most famous examples was the late 1960s Corvette. It used a mechanical panel that lifted up to reveal the hidden wipers. On paper, it looked clever. In reality, if an ice storm hit, that panel could freeze shut, and the wipers became useless. Imagine being caught in a storm with no way to clear your windshield. Number 9. Rim blow steering wheel horn. The rim blow steering wheel horn was one of the boldest design experiments of the 1970s, yet it quickly proved to be impractical in real use. Instead of placing the horn in the center of the wheel or on traditional buttons, GM, Ford, and Chrysler created a system where squeezing the inner rim of the steering wheel activated the horn. On paper, it seemed clever. You never had to move your hands off the wheel, just press lightly and the horn would sound. In reality, things went wrong fast. When drivers turned the wheel sharply to park or corner, their hands often pressed the rim unintentionally, blasting the horn without warning. The embarrassment of honking at strangers by accident became a common complaint. To make matters worse, the rubber strip inside the rim wore out quickly. Many cars developed faults where the horn worked only intermittently, or sometimes not at all, leading to costly warranty repairs. Although the concept sounded modern, the rim blow horn lasted only a few short years before disappearing from the market. Drivers realized that a simple button in the center or on the spokes of the wheel was far more reliable and user-friendly. Number 10. Dash power. Door locks of Ford and Chrysler. Unlike GM, which placed a simple switch on the armrest for easy access, Ford and Chrysler tied the function directly to the lock plunger on the door. To unlock all the doors, you had to pull the plunger up. To lock them, you had to push it down. It might sound fine in theory, but in daily use, it was far from practical. Imagine sitting in a two-door coupe with long, heavy doors, like a 1972 Mercury Marquis. If you wanted to lock both doors, you had to twist your body, reach way back, and push the plunger down. It felt awkward and unnatural. If a passenger wanted to get in, you had to stretch your arm again and pull the plunger up. On sedans, the problem was less extreme because the doors were shorter, but it was still annoying. The real problem was not only poor ergonomics, it also showed a design philosophy that ignored real driving habits. In the 1970s, many Americans did not lock their doors while driving, so Ford and Chrysler believed a separate switch was unnecessary. But as safety concerns in cities grew, owners quickly realized how inconvenient this system was. What was meant to be a touch of luxury became a daily irritation. A feature that looked advanced on paper ended up frustrating drivers instead. That is why these power door locks earned a place among the worst classic car features ever made. Looking back at this list, one thing becomes clear. Classic cars carried timeless charm, but they were never perfect. Some ideas, once praised as innovation, turned out to be inconvenient, even dangerous. Hidden wipers, rim blow horns, or Chevrolet's faulty motor mounts remind us that even the smallest engineering choice can have a huge impact on safety and the driving experience. What makes it fascinating is that these flaws add another layer to the story of classic cars. They show us how automakers experimented, failed, and improved over time. Without those missteps, we might not enjoy the refinements we take for granted today. So what do you think of this list? Have you ever owned a car with one of these frustrating features? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next deep dive into the surprising and often overlooked world of classic cars.